Welcome to the In-Between, where shift happens. This podcast is for anybody who has ever found themselves in that space in between what was and what's going to be. That space where life happens. The moment between where we are and where we're going. That space that is often uncomfortable to sit in. The stuff of life, the ups, the downs, the moments of connection and insight, and the moments where we can't see two steps in front of us. We will ask all the questions, maybe find some answers, and generally work at being okay in the mystery of the in-between.
So for today's episode, we are going to explore the topic of solitude. And, this is a topic, I don't know that we've ever really talked about it in any sort of like focused
I think probably ever
thing. And so this kind of emerged because I'm emerging from this backpacking trip or camping trip, like in the woods. And I don't know, just like solitude was like in my face. And so I thought this would be a really interesting topic to explore. So if you're listening for the first time, or maybe not even the first time, but need a little reminder, the kind of format of this podcast is exploring those, the in-between of life. And that's where kind of life happens. In between one breath and the next, right? And also, one of us comes with a set of questions. We've agreed on the topic at least, but come with a set of questions and the other one doesn't really know what the questions are. So we're kind of in the moment, in the in-between, in that in-between of thoughts, in between of one breath and the next. And so that's how we do it here at the in-between. So are you ready?
I think as ready as I'm going to be.
Yeah, you look ready.
I have a lot of like half thoughts going around.
Well, good. We'll put those half thoughts together. Your half thoughts and my half thoughts maybe might make an actual whole thought.
Yeah, there you go. Sounds good.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's buckle up. Solitude. Now, let me just a precursor to all of this that, there's a difference between solitude and isolation. And so when we talk about solitude, we're talking about these chosen moments where you're choosing to be in your moment of solitude, your place of solitude, your place of quiet, right? Which is different from forced isolation or those situations that come when we are disconnected from whatever reason from other folks, and it is not our choice. So I just want a little disclaimer on the conversation. All right, so what has been your experience of solitude? So like when you hear that, the word, right? What kind of like what emotes from your being, and then like what has been your experience or your relationship to the experience of solitude?
It's interesting because my first half thought is pretty much what you kind of led off with. Like, I think the general societal view of solitude, and this is like the feelings that come up for me reflect this idea. Like, solitude is this like state of being alone and lonely and maybe like scared, like you're out on your own, you've been left or something like that. Like solitude is a bad thing. That's kind of the first initial like gut reaction to it for me. It's like, oh, that's not a good thing. And yet my experience has said very much otherwise. Especially like, your experience over the weekend. We both had a plethora of experiences being out in nature, camping, fishing, paddleboarding, hiking, whatever the thing.
Right.
And wow, is there like a powerful connective experience that happens for me in those moments that I don't experience anywhere else. So intentional solitude, and it might even be like backpacking in a group. Like I've gone with my brothers and my dad, right? And so there's the four of us, and yet when you're hiking down the trail with a massive backpack on and you're super tired, like you're there in your, like you are so much you.
Yeah, it's like shared solitude, or this like collective solitude.
Yeah. And it is, because it's like I kind of feel like I'm in my own process.
Yeah.
At that point, and also like we're all doing the thing together. But I think solitude in terms of like intentionally choosing to remove myself from like my normal whatever that is everyday kind of experience, my day to day, and going off, stepping outside of that into some experience that is like very different from that, especially when it's one that's much slower,
Yeah.
removed from technology, from motorized vehicles, from whatever. I don't know, it's just like it's slow, it's chill, it's like feet on the ground, touching the dirt kind of thing. Like that kind of solitude is like a, I don't even know that I really have a word for what that really is, but it is a powerful experience of like connection and interconnectedness, and um I think it brings up a lot of feelings of like, and we talk about integration a lot, like integrating your whole experience, and I think that allows the like the processing of that is
Yeah.
integrating process where we can put down all the other stuff, put down paying the bills, put down the daily work, put down the whatever, and just like sink.
Well, and I found myself, like, having, like, well, just an example of, like, the backpacking trip. Like, before, like, in preparation, like, this longing for solitude and
Mm,
just that kind of decompression, and then I noticed when I was in it, it was this still my body, like, took, like, probably a good half a day to settle into it because it
sure,
was
sure.
I think I became, like, it was really loud in my experience, aware of this constant, for a lot of us, not all of us, for a lot of us, this constant, like, little dopamine hits that we
Mm,
try to get throughout the
yeah,
day, or
yeah,
whether it's with technology or just anything, right? Those little things that we kind of activate our system with in order to, I don't even know if it's in order to avoid things. I don't know what it is. But anyway,
yeah,
I
yeah,
just noticed in like half a day, my body, I felt that it was like it was reaching for it and there was nothing there. It was really uncomfortable.
yeah.
Um, so it just got me thinking of like, and then when it settled in, and I was like, oh, okay, like my brain, my body, my system's going to be okay without those sorts of things, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
was
We're gonna make it.
just interesting reminder of how much for me those things throughout the day, or getting caught up in all the tasks throughout the day, really distract me from like the isness of life, right? And
Mm,
how like uncomfortable I was for a moment in the isness of life. No, the isness of my
yeah,
own life, the
yeah,
isness of life that people, around me, the isness of like the natural life. It's like, because I don't know that it was this really interesting experience. I didn't It's almost like I don't live that every day because I'm so distracted by all the things, right? So it was really interesting to come into that space of settling my nervous system, and it took a minute.
mm.
It took a minute. So it just made me aware that I think we've talked about this before, like that self-care and aftercare. That what I was been doing is
Oh,
aftercare,
yeah,
right? Not self-care, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's interesting, what would it look like if we use solitude or those moments of quietness? It doesn't have to be like void of people,
yeah,
but those moments of quietness, what if we use that as self-care, which is that proactive sort of experience, instead of this aftercare where we have to like pry ourselves away from the life and then go in the woods in order to like feel connected.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
It is, and and happen to know where y'all went camping, and it is a place that has zero cell phone reception.
Yes.
Um, and so that in and of itself is a whole other experience, because like you don't have a choice, right? Like a lot of the places I've gone camping recently, kind of like family campsites and whatever, like
Yeah.
most of them have cell phone reception, and so there is, I'm gonna just go check every once in or whatever, right?
Right, right, right.
It's like, why? And it is that little, like that little hit, looking for that little hit or whatever,
And I felt
subconsciously.
panicky. I felt panicky
Yeah,
for like the first like couple of hours. I felt panicky, like
yeah,
I was supposed to be doing something. We're
or
supposed to
like
be checking something or
right,
something.
or what if something happened at home, or waiting for a text or checking in or whatever. Um, but that yeah, those places where you're going to be gone for 4 days and there's no checking in for you or
Yeah.
anybody else, and it's like, okay, cool. And yeah, I that first half a day or whatever, I mean, depending on how far gone you are, um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a weird space. That is a weird space, and I think that it's almost like, in a way, it's like the body reconciling society's view with isolation
Oh, yeah.
and chosen isolation. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, we're out here alone, or this is whatever, and then it's like, oh, we're out here alone. I am
Alone.
by myself. Ah, it
Nothing
is
but the
quiet.
bed. Yeah. With the sound of the river, you know? So why do you think that we are, and I'm not saying everyone is, but I think there is a little bit of a fear or discomfort, of solitude. Why do you think that we
Yeah,
either are afraid of it or avoid it or are uncomfortable with it, at least for some portions
yeah,
of
yeah,
time?
yeah. I think there's probably a lot of reasons. Some of the ones that come up for me are, I think by and large we have a massive codependency issue in the United States, probably the world. Um, and so there is this, like, I'm not who I am without my
Yeah,
relationship to someone else.
yeah, or to
Um,
something else, right? Yeah,
and I think there is a healthy version of who I am because I'm in relationship with someone else, and who they like. There is this space that we create together, me and the person that I'm in
yeah,
relationship with, uh, which is also different from, I think, how society views relationships. Right, like, there's me and you and the things that we each get because of this relationship, or there's the thing that we get to create because we're in relationship, and then that is like a shared thing.
mm,
So I think there is like the codependency side of that, where if I'm alone, do I lose that, or who am I? Am I not important? Am I not needed? Am I going to be left alone? Um, I also think because we have a society that doesn't widely value talking about traumatic experiences yet, um, that a lot of us, probably most likely all of us, have gone through some traumatic experience in our past where being alone is a really bad thing.
yeah,
Somebody was supposed to be there to help me and they weren't.
yeah,
Something really bad happened.
yeah.
And for a lot of us, we were really young, right? Like, my appendix ruptured when I was 5 years old in the middle of the night. And I didn't know any better, right? Like, the thing that was happening in my mind was I need to be taken care of, and that's not happening, right?
Right,
And so being alone, that was really bad because, like, my body knew I was going to die,
right.
right?
Yeah,
And so I think there are experiences like that for a lot of us where being alone is death. The process in our brain is like, this is bad, don't do it.
yeah. Something
You
bad could happen.
Something bad's gonna happen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we do still have a very active reptilian part of our brain that is protecting us from those things. And so,
Yeah,
especially going out, like, into the wild, if solitude means, wilderness and nature and camping and hiking and whatever the thing is, I mean, that's like going right back into the
uh,
scene that created that reptilian
yeah,
brain however many years ago. So there are, it's like, it's weird when the fight or flight kicks in when we're, like, living in the suburbs or in the city, like, to think about how that process works. It's like, oh, that's a little strange that that still works that way. It's not quite as strange when you're out in the middle of the woods.
right.
You're like,
It
oh,
seems
this
more
is
congruent.
legit.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes too, and I think solitude can just be sitting on your porch, or it can be just sitting in like
True.
quiet, or it
True.
could
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
reading a book, right? I mean, it could be those sorts of experiences, and I think for me, um, some of the fear that comes up in those moments is, I think, afraid of being with our thoughts, afraid
Mm.
of
Yeah.
because I think a lot of the noise of life often drowns out some of those internal like monologues and thoughts, and um those emotions that come up or those memories, all the things, right? It's distracting us from those things.
Yeah.
And often those things maybe we don't want to think about, or maybe they've happened and they're too traumatic to process in the moment. So we're going to tuck them away, which is perfectly fine to do, right? It's natural to do that. And sometimes in those moments of quiet, external and internal, right? Those little pockets of things that we've tucked away come out sometimes. It can be really, I don't know, scary to kind of be with your own thoughts. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes I think there's just this general discomfort of being alone with our own thoughts,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
alone with our own, those thoughts may be our fears, or those thoughts may be our dreams, or those thoughts may be, aspirate all the things, right? I think
Yeah.
for me, that is what is uh, can be a little disconcerting in those quiet moments, being alone with our thoughts,
Yeah.
especially when we're conditioned to maybe ignore some of those things, or to push those down, or not think about those things, or just be positive, right? And so we've gotten to that habit of, just don't think about it. And so when we're in that quiet, we actually have to think about it, and sometimes we're ill prepared for what comes up, right? And so I think that sometimes that's also the discomfort of solitude. But I do like what you said about the relationship, like, who am I? Who am I if I'm not answering an email? Who am
Yeah.
I if I'm not um, in charge of this meeting? Who am I if I'm not doing this or doing that, or getting stuff done? Like, who am
Yeah.
I if I'm not doing those things? And I think it's too, it's this aversion to rest, that it's okay to rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think solitude does um, help us have those rest and reset moments. And I think that normalizing that is needed, I think is what's needed.
Yeah. 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 It does make me wonder how much of this is like a learned trait or learned
Mhm.
behavior, or how much of it is hardwired. Like if we were taught different coping mechanisms, or if that was a thing that was talked about regularly in society, would we all become adults with a different capability for like managing those thoughts that
Mhm.
we I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be some events that happen that we're not ready to deal with right now, and so we do kind of put them in a box for the moment and hopefully digest them over time and
Right.
kind of work through it. um but I think there's so many people with such repressed experiences and thoughts about it that they haven't processed, and then those things kind of poke out at unexpected times, and we end up like lashing out at people, or we like break down or whatever, and it's because it's like that boiling pot with the lid on it eventually bubbles over. So I do wonder how, would it be different if even just talking about this kind of thing on a more regular, on a more collective level, would equip us better to not run into those kind of situations, right? And maybe that is like, it is self-care and it doesn't turn into aftercare because we're more aware of it. But even just, we all know at least somebody who's got the TV on all the time in their house because I think it's so loud in their own head that they need that, right? And it's like, would that be such a less common thing if we all had been raised in a society that talks about this, that actually knows how to teach children how to manage and handle these things, like it's a common experience, so it's not like
I
some.
would say yes, absolutely,
I, w-
right?
I would think.
I read somewhere that, and I'm one of these people, like, going to sleep at night with some sort of noise, white noise, um, or, like, having, like, this background noise, like,
Sure.
feeling more comfortable when there's background noise, is often, not always, but it's often, from a traumatic response of fear of abandonment, fear
Sure.
of, right? And so I
Yeah.
think it's kind of what you're saying, that noise of like not something not being there when you needed it. It's just very interesting.
Yeah.
Like all of these, like even all the topics that we talk about, I don't know, the more we're talking about this right now, I'm becoming aware, like, that they're not like separate topics. We talk about empathy and we talk about authenticity, we talk about vulnerability. And, today we're talking about solitude, but they're all like connected. Like we could very easily
Yeah.
go in between those things. And so I think for me, having those moments of, and we don't, you don't have to call it solitude, just moments of quiet, moments of pause, moments of rest
Yeah.
really allows us to kind of recalibrate our experience in any given moment, right? So, I mean, I try to take time throughout the day to kind of walk outside, walk in nature, all those things just to recalibrate our system. And I think because our systems we are not equipped or made for the life that we're currently living in how we're living it, like this
Yeah. Okay.
inundation of uh information and just stuff coming at us that we're not
Yeah.
prepared to process at the speed in which we're receiving things. And
Yeah.
so I think often for myself, like sometimes I'll feel like a failure, like, oh, how can I like do like 50 tasks like I used to be able to, or all that, or why do I get like so overloaded with like stuff where I didn't before?
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, I think one, it's an awareness of, oh, wait, I'm not equipped to do that. So I think it is a learning of, wait, how I've operated actually isn't optimal, right? And so it's actually a flip.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
actually now operating more optimal because I'm recognizing,
Yeah.
the impact of,
It just doesn't fit within the system very well.
right, right. And so, I don't know where I was going with that, but I don't know. It's just, and I think too, because I used to think, I used to be like, hey, I'm so extroverted and I don't want to be alone and I don't need quiet and I don't need to be by myself. Oh, Lord, no. Right. And maybe it is this kind of experience of, or just understanding of getting more comfortable with my own self. Right. It kind of takes coming to this age to get more
Yeah.
comfortable with who I am and be like, oh, wait, no, I actually need long periods of quiet. I actually need those kind of restorative moments.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? It's okay to lean into those things. Um, and that productivity is not our worth. Being able to like process all sorts of shit at one time, it's not our worth, right? It doesn't dictate our value. Um,
I think that authenticity piece probably plays a large role in all this too. Well, kind of like you're saying, like we could go in so many different directions with this, but I
yeah.
think the authenticity thing, because like prior to 2020, and I think lockdown and COVID had a big part in kind of catapulting a lot of us forward in this process. But prior to that, I don't I don't know that I necessarily considered myself an extrovert, but there were times where I enjoyed being around large groups of people,
Mhm.
and it didn't matter really who those groups were. And yet now it's like I'm okay with large groups of people, but I had to prepare myself for it.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily like I know that afterwards I'm going to be very like I'm going to be spent.
Right.
And what I have found is that when I'm with the right people, I could be with those people for like ever and I'm good.
Yeah.
Which feels really different than like thinking I was getting recharged by being in groups of people. It's like fitting in versus belonging, sharing for your own benefit versus like sharing to be seen and be part of. It's like it's a really the contrast is very extreme in how it feels, like it's a different experience now. And so solitude, it's almost like solitude then was getting away from, and
Mm.
solitude now is stepping out of.
Or even moving towards, right? Moving towards
Yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right.
Stepping into some yeah, I like that. I like that visual.
It's got a
Instead of
very
like
real different feel.
instead of like pulling away from something or escaping, it is stepping towards
Something
some
greater or something. Yeah, yeah,
whatever it could be. It could be different things at different
yeah,
times, right?
yeah.
So what are those like periods of solitude, like those of chosen periods? And like it doesn't have to be like in the woods, and it can just be like
Yeah.
10 minutes, right? Or just stepping outside or just being quiet or whatever. What has I hate to say what have you learned because I don't think everything is a lesson. But I'm gonna say it like
Yeah.
what has it shown you? What has it revealed? Those what has it revealed to you in those moments? What has become like so clear?
I I think that it has revealed the benefit of slowing down, and that sounds really simplistic, but
Yeah.
I never like I really didn't know how much I was convinced I had to go, 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 go all the time. Because I just thought it was just so quote normal to me
Right.
to just keep that you should be busy doing. And that wasn't even like a should, it was just that's how it is. That's
Right.
how we are. That's how it was growing up. That's like everybody was just doing something all the time. And so that just felt like a constant baseline.
Yeah.
Like I want to be up doing something. Well, it wasn't really like I wanted to. There was this weird drive to like almost force me to be doing something all the time.
Right.
And so if it wasn't work, it was some other kind of work. It was something else. It was, practicing my instrument. It was whatever. It was always doing something. And so even the things sitting and resting, like even like reading, I was reading to do something. I wasn't reading to read. I wasn't reading to chill. I wasn't reading to just let my mind wander, right? I was doing something. And so I think those moments of solitude have kind of uncovered that deep underlying like drive and like what is that about, right? And that's yeah, it is. It's who are you if you're not XYZ?
XYZ. Yeah. What
What is your value in life if you're not doing, being, producing, creating, whatever? But if you're moving, if you're doing something, then obviously you are of immense value. And so keep doing that, right? And it's like, oh, right. I don't actually have to be doing anything.
yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it's interesting you say that, or not, maybe not. But I mean, that was going to be my response too. It's like for me in moments in times of solitude, I'm keenly aware, and I think it's because it reveals a discomfort, and I think discomfort has lots of things to show us and to reveal to
Mm,
us, and so
yeah.
um, feeling the discomfort that happens like initially when you enter into periods of solitude until your system settles down and really kind of asking like what's that about, what's underneath that discomfort. It's exactly what for me what shows up is this addiction to doing that you always that right. I mean we were
Yeah.
growing up same as what you described. We always had to be doing something. You couldn't just sit and relax to sit and do nothing. That was being what lazy or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. And so it just created just from a very like young age this idea of doing equaled value or doing equaled good. I don't know, but so this it was this like
Hmm.
I don't know if it's an addiction, but this habit of doing.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in those moments of solitude where there's maybe nothing to do, um, it can be uncomfortable because it's like, oh, my system is used to doing. And so to really just be like, what is that? What does it feel like just to be? And I think for a lot of us, this this experience of being is very uncomfortable because we lean in more into the doing, right? Because that's our productivity, that's our role, that's our job, that's
Yeah.
what we get paid for. I mean, all the things, right? Um, no one's paying us to be,
Yeah. Right.
right? I mean, in this capitalistic framework, not many people are getting paid just to be.
Yeah.
Maybe some, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but it's always, oh, well, these are the objectives, these are the job descriptions, these are the things that determine that you are doing something
Yep.
good, productive, whatever. And if you're not doing those things, then right. And so for me, it's that discomfort of like, well, what do you, yeah, my wife and I, we were sitting in the woods. I'm like, what do you want to do? That's exactly what my words were. What do
Yep.
you want to do? And I was like, oh, wait, I don't know. I mean, right.
Yeah.
It was just really this weird sort of language around the idea that we're here in the woods, we should be doing something. Right. And so just to,
Yeah.
for me, it brought this kind of I brought out of the woods, out of the experience, like this rekindled desire to be, to every day try to
Yeah.
shift this habit of doing and shift it into what is it like for me? What do I want to be today? Like, right? How do I want to be today?
Yeah.
Not what do I want to do today? What do I have to do today? How can I step into being today?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I do find it really interesting, like fascinating, really, that even after however long we've each been, I don't know, let's say practicing mindfulness, just being aware of our own thoughts and whatever, still how quickly our feeling, our sensation, our experience, like subconsciously translates to words just coming out, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the exactly what was happening for you, but I know for me, because I say that. What do you want to do? What do you want? Hey, what do you want to do? And it's often out of like, when I sit back and look at it, it's often out of a moment of like, there's that feeling of discomfort that just kind of like pokes, and it's like, oh, hey, what do you want to do? Instead of being like, oh, huh, I'm noticing that I'm feeling slight discomfort because I'm not doing
Doing
something.
something, right.
But
It's really
immediately, like
interesting.
it just kicks in. It's like, hey, what do you want to do? And it seems so mundane and innocent, but it's like, oh, and I guess it is. I mean, I guess it is. It's an innocent
Yeah.
question, and at the same time, it's got like miles of depth to it.
Well, and it's I was listening to there was a podcast that Brene Brown was on. I don't know if it was her own or or one of her workshop. I can't remember what it was, but she was talking about, especially, just in the kind of this US sort of centric mindset. We talk about people or we meet people, "Oh, what do you do?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like for a job, right?
Yeah.
And she said she's tried to, like, get away from that, and instead she, on a phone plopping down beside someone says, "What do you love?" And, like, how that's really, like, uncomfortable
Sure.
because it's, like, not what we usually do, right?
Yeah, it's like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? What are you implying by that? Like, we
Yeah,
know the script of what do you do? Oh, all right,
yeah,
blah 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 blah, whatever.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, like, just to kinda wrap it up, I think, like, the lesson of solitude, if not like, not that there's always has to be a lesson, but I think what solitude can reveal, I think it's different for everybody, right? But I think that it is an opportunity to step out of the doing and into the being and explore what that looks like for each of us. And it looks different for each of us. At least that's kind of my final take. What about your final take on solitude?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this conversation has revealed a little bit deeper for me several things that used to feel one way and now feel a different way that I haven't thought about in a while. And so I think even solitude, like solitude can be a state of doing. I am
Mhm.
doing nothing. That is
Right,
the thing I'm doing right now.
right.
And I think that's how I used to unconsciously view solitude, whereas now it's just being with myself.
Mm.
And that could be anywhere, doing anything. That could
Yeah.
be anywhere at any moment, right? So I think solitude, it I don't know, I guess it's like anything else. What's the intention behind it? How am I aware of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, whatever. And I think, solitude, when we allow ourselves to put down the doing, when I allow me to put down the doing and just kind of be,
Yeah.
that's a whole other like level of myself that I don't know. It's almost like I get to gift myself that every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
You
that.
know?
I love that. Well, I've loved this conversation on solitude, and it's like, solitude and its like effects can even be found in conversations like this, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the invitation is maybe take more opportunities for solitude and whatever that looks like for each of us, and to just notice,
Yeah.
notice the shifts in our brain and our body, and you just notice those little shifts. And I think that the more we're aware of those little shifts, right? That's the in between of life, right? That is those things
Yeah.
between this moment and the next. And there's always those opportunities. And I think chosen solitude brings those opportunities. So I've loved this conversation. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for playing with us. And for those listening, maybe take an opportunity for a little taste of chosen solitude in whatever way that is supportive for you. And until next time, we'll catch you in the in-between.
Nobody really enjoys being in the in-between, but thanks for being here anyway. We may not have found all of the answers, but certainly some, and maybe more importantly, a little shift has happened. Because that is really what it's all about, learning to be curious, authentic, and yes, maybe even a tad bit vulnerable. And the beauty of it all is that we are not alone in the in-between. So until next time, we hope a lot of shift happens.